Perfect. And the short minute or the short seconds actually back. Hello, hello, welcome. I've got two wonderful, wonderful gentlemen with me here today. I've got Noel Sobelman and Mithun Ridha. Everyone is pretty familiar with those two names. I mean, these are our friends, these are industry friends, and it's my pleasure and it's my honor to welcome these two gentlemen here on board with me for our conference at this time of the day. Actually, for Mithun and I, very, very late in Europe, well, now quite early, so he needs to show us the energy. He needs to bring out the energy here, but it's my honor. And yeah, without further ado, I'll just say last things. This is a panel discussion on managing the innovation portfolio. And as I said, Noel here, Noel Sobelman, is the Principal and Strategic Innovation Advisor for ChangeLogic. Hello, Noel. Thank you so very much for coming.
Thank you, Katie. Great to be here.
And we've got Mithun Ridha. Mithun, hello, hello, welcome. Good evening to you. Good evening to Paris. Mithun is a PPM practice manager, enterprise architect, and international speaker. He works for Altran and actually does many wonderful things outside of Altran. And it's honestly my great pleasure to, again, welcome you here both. And if there's anything I can help with, please feel free and I'll come back. And this is going to be very interesting because we've had panel discussions with 3+ people, and I'm so excited to actually hear you speak, as everyone else, I can imagine. So I'm going to give you the platform and the space. Welcome again, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
So hi, Mithun. So we really encourage attendees to throw questions into the chat. We're going to both be monitoring the chat. We're going to keep this pretty informal. So, and we're gonna do our best to answer all the questions that come in. And Meet and I have prepared a few topics on the subject of innovation portfolio management, and we're just gonna see where this conversation takes us. And hopefully, you'll get some good takeaways, some good lessons learned from our joint experience. So, as Katie mentioned, I'm Noel Sobelman. I've worked in this space for virtually my whole career. I've spent a lot of time in life sciences, but I've also worked in other industries, mostly technology-driven industries. And in the life sciences, most of my work is probably in the med device space, but I've done quite a few engagements with pharmaceutical companies as well. And a lot of what I've done over the years is helping companies to build this innovation portfolio management. I call it a discipline, not a process, because a lot of it is about decision making and making tough decisions when you don't have all the information, and connecting those investment allocation decisions to your strategy. And it requires quite a number of different elements to pull it off well, and to be effective at it, and to be dynamic at it. And we'll talk about what all that means as we get into the conversation. So Mithun, why don't you introduce yourself, and we can just dive right in.
Yeah. So hi everyone. I'm Mithun Ridha. I'm enterprise architect based in the Enterprise Transformation Expertise Center of Altran, which is a part of Capgemini Group. And for me, just like Noel, the majority of my projects, or the years spent in the industry, have been spent in working on health sciences projects. So medical devices and pharmaceutical companies. And I do also work in other sectors like automobile, investment banking, insurance, and retail. So yeah, glad to be here, and really looking forward to a fantastic discussion, as I always have had in the past with Noel.
So why don't we talk about some of the challenges you're seeing with your clients and the companies you work with in regards to innovation portfolio management. What are some of the parts of that discipline that you see companies struggling with over and over again? And maybe we can start there and do a deeper dive into what we do to help solve some of those challenges.
Yeah, I would say the major challenge is clarity. So like where they want to go. So what kind of products do they want to have in their innovation portfolio. And it's a lot of times I see them struggling with just too many ideas. So a lot of times the reason given is that we have to be competitive. We have to check what the competition is doing. We have to respond, and a lot of the ideas are in response to what's happening. But what is forgotten is that if you have a lot of projects going on, lot of things in work in progress status, it just spreads you very thin on what you can really do. And that again shows up later when you have all these projects which mature and they get launched at the same time. A lot of times the organizations are realizing that they lack this capacity to execute. So this link between the strategy and execution, for this you really need the clarity. And I think that's the main issue faced by my clients. What about you, Noel?
Yeah, no, I agree. I was going to go there as well. Ideas seem to be the easy part. You can argue that coming up with lots of ideas, when it comes to innovation, we call it the innovation zoo. You get lots of ideas, but you have to learn, because just about every company is capacity constrained. We're not all Amazon, so we can't just add capacity to take on more and more and more. So what I've also observed is a lot of companies, they load up to capacity or even beyond capacity, and because they think that's the way to drive growth, as opposed to right-sizing your portfolio and focusing on throughput. And that might mean, because things change, the market conditions change, and your projects don't always go according to plan. So you need some you might call it a buffer. You need to make sure that you are thinking about throughput. And what that means is, if you just load up the capacity, you're going to have some bottleneck functions. Every company does, and companies that really have matured their portfolio management practices, they've gone from being reactive when they see those constraints to being proactive. So the visibility of where those downstream constraints might be, what functions or what disciplines are just chronic pinch points or constraints in your pipeline, and being able to do something about that before you get there. So that could mean outsourcing, that could mean flexing capacity or staggering projects to make sure you lighten the load on that bottleneck function. And the metric that you really need to think about is your overall throughput, not just how much you stack up in the portfolio. And then you brought up the point about strategy. So where to play, how to win with innovation. By definition, a portfolio management is about linking, making sure that the projects you're working on are connected to your strategy. So you have the right mix of projects, whether it be across different growth horizons, different product categories or technology categories, or maybe even geographies. And I'm always surprised when I work with my clients as to how much of a disconnect there is between that strategy or that ambition and projects that you're working on. And through the pandemic, a lot of what I've seen lately is the ambition just doesn't, there's a mismatch between that ambition and the project. So that when you do that bottoms up roll up of all the projects you're working on and the forecasted revenues and profitability, there's often a large disconnect. And often in the last few years, it's been leaders are surprised by how much incremental innovation there is in their portfolios. We're taking too many safe bets, so we're not going to hit our growth goals unless we have a better portfolio mix, where we go after some high risk reward projects in addition to some of those incremental product line extensions.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that, I would add something which I feel also companies are struggling with is really the keeping that engagement in a especially in an innovation or an R&D project over a very long period of time. Especially if we see any kind of drug development project, the time it takes the R&D phase to until the commercialization and also the regulatory approval phase. So everything, like you might end up spending, like especially if it's a vaccine, you might spend up almost 10 to 12 years, which means your project team will get changed several times. So maybe every 2 or 3 years you have a very different project manager managing it. And what happens is especially in research, a lot of this knowledge is lost. I mean, we talk about knowledge transfer, but the real knowledge transfer, it's very difficult to make it happen. And so we're talking about intellectual property, we're talking about knowledge, and when we have very siloed organization, the knowledge is not really transparent and not given away as much as it should. And that's what maybe reduces the motivation at some point of time, like regular points of time. You have a decreasing level of motivation and engagement from the teams, and that really results in later in big faulty areas, which you discover much later in the development process.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the team aspect, and it's there's having high performance teams. The point you made, and whenever there's turnover on the team, there's a knowledge ramp when you're bringing on the new people, and so trying to avoid that turnover or that handoff from discovery to development to R&D to commercialization. Anytime there's a handoff, I get worried. So having a well-defined core team structure, certainly we've learned over the years it needs to be cross-functional, a jointly accountable team that knows how to break down some of the silos that you can see in organizations. Keeping it small, but that doesn't mean you have a broader extended team that you tap into with the individual contributors that and subject matter experts along the way. But at least keeping that core team consistent from discovery all the way through success in the market is important. And then the other part of it, of being just your execution capability and having a repeatable process where the interdependencies are known, and you understand what the upstream function has to deliver before the downstream function can be successful. And just mapping that out is really the job of the project team leader. And the other element, so there's project teams, there's the process itself of developing the product, and then there's the governance of that pipeline. And that's where what I see, the strategy meets the executor. So at certain milestones, we need to check in, and leaders need to make that business decision. Are we still on track? Does this opportunity still make sense? Are we clearing all our regulatory or technical hurdles? And as opposed to investing in a project and then not revisiting it until you launch it into market, revisiting that project and investing in tranches along the way and making that business decision. Do we continue to pursue, or do we shut it down, or redirect a project or pivot the project? So having all three of those elements, I think, is an important part of the system. Looks like we have a question coming in from Monica. She's asking if we could speak to any tools or strategies to help bridge the disconnect between strategy and execution. So I could take you want to start, Mithun?
There's so many tools actually, especially at the strategy level. If you want to clarify, like many visual tools coming up, like the business Canva, you can really map it and make it as easy to understand as possible. So I think in the conception phase, I think ideation phase, if you want to use any kind of visual tools, I think a lot of them are available. What is complicated right now in terms of tools is prioritization criteria. So there's a lot of discussion a lot of organizations, there are teams that don't agree on the criteria, and then a lot is put on everything that is quantifiable. But then the tipping point is that everything is not quantifiable, and you have to still make decisions. So tool might be creating, giving you kind of a satisfaction that it would be helping you, but I think you need much more than just a tool. So I would suggest that in this kind of case, it's good to stay with very simple tools and the focus more on the creativity part, the ideation, the brainstorming. How much are you letting people express, and how much can you capture all those ideas, and how can you create a higher level of speed, in your execution of these ideas. So I think focusing purely on tools makes you end up with a lot of detailed data, detailed information with which you cannot make a lot of sense out of it.
So my thoughts on the tools part of this is, well, first of all, I agree to some extent. You can. There's different stages of maturity a company goes through when it comes to portfolio management tools, and there's lots of them out there. There's point solutions, there's integrated PPM solution, project portfolio management solution, and as you're maturing this discipline, you get to the point where managing your portfolios off of disconnected spreadsheets just doesn't work anymore. It's too complex. It takes too much time to pull the information together off of different people's laptops and create reports and making sure the data is up to date. So at some point in your maturity, you need to think about a PPM system. And for those, most of you I think would know what I mean by a PPM system, but it's a tool. It's an enterprise solution that has a common database where all your data, one source of the truth, all your data is in one place. And I'm talking your ideas, your project business cases, your resources, your supply and demand of resources, your project schedules. So and it's integrated. So if you change one, if you move out a roadmap, remove a project on the roadmap, everything else maps out from there if the data model is constructed appropriately. When you go from disconnected spreadsheets to these PPM systems, you're able to go from being static to dynamic. And what I mean by that is when you have the real advantage of these tools, they allow you to make real-time decisions. So at any point in time, as long as the project teams are keeping their project data up to date, you can run all kinds of what-if scenarios, and you can look at any status updates, and all that information can be shared up and down the organization or horizontally across the organization. And it's very powerful. So that example I gave earlier of understanding where your constraints might be, you can very quickly see, okay, if I approve this project and fund this new project, what does that mean to my testing organization? That if I can see next April, I'm going to have I'm going to be oversubscribed. I'm going to have too much demand for my test resources. And then the tool, you can see that, and then again be proactive about that. So these tools give you lots of visibility. They give you that dynamic capability. So I see it as a more mature stage for companies. At a certain point, you're going to need them. But to Mitten's point, you have to be careful about automating poor processes, though. So as you're rolling out these tools, you need to make sure that you're optimizing the processes as well, because the ultimate test is that the tools get used. And you're not just automating poor processes. It's improving both the processes and the tool. I used to joke that buying a tool and thinking you're going to improve your portfolio management process is like buying an exercise bike and thinking you're going to lose weight, right? So you really need to use it as a catalyst for change in the process side.
Absolutely. And for one of my clients from the medical devices sector. So we were doing a kind of a survey of all the PPM tools that they have, and that was so interesting. The work stream working on this issue, they were so much surprised that the number of PPM solutions came up to almost like 14 of them. So with 14 of them, and there are several sites having different systems, and the metadata is not shared. There is a disconnect in especially in the enterprise architecture view. So to include all those sites, different locations, different countries, and all of the data, especially where financial data, which is very much local, because there is a lot of constraints which are not the same, tax related constraints, and more financial reporting constraints which are different. So the systems are really created differently, and this is something that happens whenever you are an organization that has been created after several mergers and acquisitions and divestments, because each time each entity that has been absorbed had a completely different set of systems, and which makes it very, very complex to really find a way to have a tool, PPM tool that gets access to all those inputs, because initially the data sets or the data structure was not created to be able to satisfy this whole future enterprise architecture. So I can add to this also that there's also the culture of the teams and the way they're using the tools, which will be also very important in the PPM use of the PPM solutions. For example, I have several client teams who consider time tracking and the resource management to be not in their culture, and so that part they're very reluctant to really implement in their PPM solution, and that's one of the reasons that with that you cannot do a real capacity analysis, and you can't see what is your what kind of time and resources are you consuming on your projects, and what can be done to really help relieve more resources for your most innovative projects. So I think the culture and this fear of time tracking might be meaning that the managers are wanting to control people more. And I mean, that's absolutely not what is the intent behind it. The intent is to really know what resources are currently there, what kind of skills are available, and what is missing, and what kind of optimized planning can we do to do the best and implement and execute a maximum of projects.
Yeah, I'm on the square that well, first of all, I think we all have learned over the years that you need to kind of take a crawl, walk, run approach to rolling out these systems, processes, and tools. You can throw too much at an organization too quickly, and then when things go wrong, they're going to blame the tool. So when it comes to time tracking, I'd be careful about what I would do is get the basics, and I call it rough cut capacity planning, and let's make sure that we get some of the basics of portfolio management in place before we start adding advanced capabilities, because these tools are pretty powerful. And when it comes to time tracking, just be sure you're getting the value, because that's where I also see a lot of pushback. Unless you're working for a government contractor where you have to, it's regulated and you have to track your time. Take a close look at the value you're getting. Maybe it's for and manage that question. So I typically advise my clients to let's get really good at this, and then we'll consider time tracking maybe in wave 2 or 3. But let's really make sure we're getting the value, because there is you will get a lot of pushback on that side of it. But great question, Monica. Thank you for that. And looks like we have just a few minutes left. Just want to maybe Miten, we can talk a little bit about just the governance and how the governance approach. And just to kind of start on that topic, what I've realized over the years, there's different layers of hierarchy when it comes to governing your portfolios. There's the corporate level, but there's also most large companies are broken up into multiple business units. So there's business unit levels, and then there's product lines within those business units. So you have this hierarchical structure of a portfolio, and it all needs to roll up to corporate, so it all ties together in a perfect world. But what I always do is I suggest that you focus on getting it right at the business unit level first. And why is that? Because it's at the business unit level where resource allocation decisions are made. And so you want to make sure that you have a good approach to prioritizing your projects and allocating resources at the business unit level. And once you have that working well, then you can cascade up to the corporate level, because often at the business units will share resources across business units. There might be a shared resource pool, and somebody needs to break the tie between, okay, are those resources going to go to this business unit or that business unit? A number 4 priority in one business unit might be higher value to the corporate goals than a number 1 priority in a different business unit. So that's where the ability to roll up your project priorities to a higher level umbrella set of priorities is going to be an important part of the equation.
Absolutely. And in terms of governance, I feel like you have to make sure that all the departments, if it's a cross-functional project, that all the departments that should be represented, they should be included in the board, and especially if it's over several sites in several countries. I would suggest you have at least one person from each of the countries, because if you have to roll out the product later, you need sponsorship, and you have to make sure that the sponsorship is arranged, or the voice of the local sponsors are expressed from the very beginning, very early stage of your R&D project. So I would suggest really have a diverse team. If you can have people who have a lot of cognitive diversity, that might really help, because if you have exactly the same kind of people with the same way of thinking and same skills, I mean, it might not be the best way to get the ideas to really be a very high performance team. So especially if you are thinking about a complex organization, want to have a governance that's really fit for success. I think you have to think about more about, yes, how are you selecting that team, and is everyone represented? How are they connecting with each other? What is the chemistry between these members? And then how much are they engaged over time? Because R&D projects an innovation project, they are always much longer. They are perceived to be much longer. So you have to have this governance that's making sure that resources are in place, that all the problems which are faced by the team members are facilitated by the sponsors and the executives in the way that the team can do the work and they can really deliver the project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one other tip on that I've learned on governance is it's always good to separate analysis from decision making in your portfolio review process. So we like to form a cross-disciplinary business team to crunch the numbers, to run the what if scenarios, and to come to a portfolio with a set of recommendations. So you start with a set of recommendations, and you have a clear agenda with the typical questions that are asked around strategic alignment, around growth, performance to growth goals, around any white space opportunities, reviewing roadmaps, and that resource supply demand question. And the team comes prepared with the analysis team comes prepared with a set of recommendations. So when you do that, the portfolio becomes more of a decision-making forum. The worst thing you can have is a portfolio review, which appears to be like a status update, where the teams are marched into the room and they give a status update on their projects, and the executives sit back and poke holes in each program. That's not a value add. That's not a valuable use of the time of all those people. So make sure your portfolios are decision focused, and you have clear decision roles for the governance team. And that you're holding portfolio reviews at least quarterly. In this environment, the annual review of your portfolio doesn't cut it anymore. There's just too much change, too much. You just need to be more dynamic than that. So a quarterly portfolio review cadence is a good place to start for most industries, and then making sure that's effective and you have clear outcomes for those kinds of meetings.
Absolutely. And to that, I can just add that make sure this governance is really making some decisions. A lot of times there's a lot of hesitation and the decisions are not made. They're delayed, or initiatives or innovation initiatives that you need to kill. I have clients where they never kill a project. They only postpone a project. And you have to think about that. You have to kill some of them if you want to really focus and have the resources for the best opportunities.
Thank you, gentlemen. This was so very professional and so highly cozy having you two here, and just listening to you speak and talk and exchange your experiences, really. And it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. I'm here. I was all ears, and it was wonderful. And thank you again so much for stepping in and for making it work. We know what that means, but thank you so much. It was very wonderful. And actually, Noel is one of our PPM Workout ambassadors as well. So this is something interesting. If you'd like to connect with him, he's one of our ambassadors, and actually Mithun is one of our members of the PPM Workout platform. So you have a space and a place where you can connect with both of these professionals. So thank you, Noel, and thank you so much, Mithun, for coming in here and making it work so wonderfully. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and thanks, Noel. Bye.
Take care, Mithun.